Welcome to HueLike vlog. Today I am reviewing Brotherless Night by V. Ganeshananthan, who is an American author of Sri Lankan Tamil heritage. This is a book that takes you back to the recent history that many of us have lived, but only through newspapers and television and not through the life of people who were at ground zero. This is historical fiction and is set in Sri Lanka in one of its most tumultuous periods of 1980s, the civil war in Sri Lanka, which had an immense effect on the region, particularly the politics of India. The book starts in 2009 in New York City with a very dramatic first line: "I recently sent a letter to a terrorist I used to know." The book is mostly written in flashback, like a reminiscence. And if I remember correctly, the author said somewhere that she started to write this book in 2004. The book is clearly a fine piece of much refinement in writing over the years. The book is written in the first person narrative of Sashi, who in 1981 Jaffna is almost 16 years old and dreams of becoming a doctor, just like her eldest brother Niranjan and her late grandfather, who was a renowned physician in Colombo. The story is steeped in the socio-political history of Sri Lanka, and it might be useful to understand some of the background. Sri Lanka has primarily two ethnic groups. The majority is Sinhala speaking Buddhists, who constitute about 74% of population, and the Tamil speaking minority. Most of the Tamil speaking minority are Hindu, but some are also Muslims. The Tamils originally arrived in the island during the times of Chola rule. During British rule, the Tamils were a favored community because they were spread in many British colonies and there was a broader commercial network among them. English language schools were in Tamil areas and many Tamils were in the civil services. After the independence of Sri Lanka in 1948, the Sinhalese gained power and in effect Sri Lanka became a majoritarian state and made many discriminatory laws against the Tamil ethnic groups residing in the country. These ranged from citizenship to language to education and economic and religious discrimination. It's better to give examples. The language of the country was changed to Sinhala. In effect, it marginalized those who knew Tamil or English and didn't know the Sinhala language. Tamil speaking civil servants were forced to resign because they didn't know Sinhala. Instead of giving protection to minorities, the Tamil minority had to score higher in the medical college admissions in the Sinhala language ecosystem. Sinhalese farmers were pushed into Tamil areas and import of Tamil language media was banned and Buddhism as a religion was given primacy. In a way, in the majoritarian Sinhala Buddhist state, the Tamils were reduced to second-class citizens. All these led to build-up of dissatisfaction among the Tamils and ultimately led to their resorting to arms to demand a separate country, the Tamil Elam. It's in this backdrop that Sashi, the main character, finds herself. While she is aiming to become a doctor and filled with hope for a better future, the world around her is withering away for the worse. As Sashi says, "We were civilians first. You must understand that word, terrorist, is too simple for the history we have lived. Too simple for me, too simple even for this man." Sashi describes her brothers in a very interesting way. Dark men with white smiles. These Tamil men I loved and who belonged with me. In my house there were 4 of them. Each of my brothers resembled my father in a different way. All of them had what some people call Jaffna eyes, dark and piercing. The story is captivating and absolutely immersive. It transports the reader to those times and the setting. Sashi as a character in the 1980s is simple, hopeful and has brothers and friends of whom some would join the resistance movement and be later called terrorists. Her father is a surveyor, a minor civil servant and is on the move in different parts of the island and is well versed in Sinhala language. Sashi does not know the Sinhala language because the schools in Jaffna, in protest, had stopped teaching Sinhala years before she was born. The socio-economic outcome of all this was that the Tamils got gradually sidelined from education and employment opportunities. It's not clear from the book, but it seems that the medical entrance and the medical education was still done in English. The important role the bicycle played in the life of people has been very well portrayed. The story of Sashi is woven around real political events that occurred during the time, like bank robbery by LTT, burning of the Jaffna Public Library by Sinhalese police. The library was one of the biggest libraries of Asia. Capture of youths by army, public protests by mothers to get their children released in which the women were successful, and also fastened to death by an LTT person in the Gandhian way, which also showed a cruel aspect of these movements, that no effort was made to save the person who was in his 20s, but he was used as a tool to further the objectives of the movement, and also the role of Indian peacekeeping force. While the Sri Lankan Tamils looked to India for support, India did not want to dent the integrity of the Sri Lankan land, and even among the Tamil resistance groups, they were not united. Some of these groups looked at India with suspicion, and one consequence of this was the assassination of previous Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, by LTT. The story told through the life and eyes of Sashi is absolutely immersive, as if we are witnessing the events and experiencing her fears and anxiety firsthand. And in this, how Sashi herself transforms through that period of uncertainty and violence, where her two brothers and a family friend got sucked into joining the terrorist movement. And despite the family members being part of LTT, the problems the family was forced through by the LTT. The book is in a way an urge for equality and peace. As Sashi says, someday the story will begin with the word civilian, the word home. And while I am no longer the version of myself who met with terrorists every day, I also want you to understand that when I was that woman, when two terrorists encountered each other in my world, what they said first was simply hello, like any two people you might know or love. The book raises many questions as to, is armed struggle in the modern world an effective political tool? Are these armed groups any more sympathetic to their own people compared to the dictators or authoritarian states they are fighting? When there are many voices, can a specific armed group claim to represent the whole ethnic group? Besides, the book also raises questions as to how effective is reliance of an ethnic minority group on help and support by an external country. Again, this seems ineffective, as the supporting country would have its own geopolitical interests and not the interests of the ethnic minority of another country. Do majoritarian rule work? If we see Sri Lanka, it only brings strife and resentment and ultimate violence. In effect, the majoritarian rule may ego boost some rulers, but in effect, it only weakens the integrity of country from within. This book shows that in centers of conflict, the real heroes are the ordinary people who underwent the catastrophe and still survived and came out strong. This book is a compelling read, and apart from the book, if you listen to the audiobook, which has been narrated by Nirmala Rajasingham, it is heartbreaking and haunting, an absolute fantastic rendition of the book. This book is highly recommended. The link to the book is in the description. Thank you for watching this presentation.